So gentlemen, who owns an NFT? Does anybody own an NFT?
I have a MetaMask wallet that's essentially zero now. So do you want to consider that an NFT?
Don't duck the question, Don. Do you own NFTs?
I do not. I do not own any right now.
All right, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
You ready?
Get in it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. 1, 2. Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Pre-IPO Stocks podcast. With me is Nick Fusco, CEO of 8View, a pre-IPO secondary market pricing company, Don Nitti, venture partner at Social Leverage, a venture capital fund, and Dan Jassy, general partner at Chroma Ventures, a venture capital fund. Our boy Clint is on holiday this week. Okay, we got 3 topics to hit on. We're going to talk OpenSea and Blur and NFT exchange. AI update with Base AI, that's Musk's new deal, and OpenAI and e-cigarettes. There's a deal going on with Juul, Altria and NJOY, but looks like Juul's kind of odd man out. So let's hit on OpenSea and Blur first. So, all right, just to kick us off. So OpenSea is an NFT exchange. Blur is a new NFT exchange that just started. And they came out 0 commissions. They got 80% market share in just a few months' time. They launched in October, and OpenSea's now responded with 0% commission themselves. So not only is NFT trading way down, but now all these guys are going to 0 on revenue. So it's a tough business. That being said, Blur pulled in $11 million seed from Paradigm, and they're out in the market right now at looking to raise 15 to 30 million at a $700 million valuation. Okay. OpenSea's taken it on the chin over the last year. So here's a chart from 8View. It's showing 1 year performance. It's down 76% over the last year. I got them at $13.3 billion valuation. 13.3 billion was the last primary round in December of 21, and they're at 5.4 billion now based on Nick's secondary marks, right? So gentlemen, who owns an NFT? Does anybody own an NFT?
I have a MetaMask wallet that's essentially zero now. So do you want to consider that an NFT?
Don't duck the question, Don. Do you own NFTs?
I do not. I do not own any right now. But I would tell you one thing: if you look at what Blur is raising at, in growth rate comparable to what OpenSea raised at, it just shows you how frothy the market was. 1. And 2, it shows you how egregiously overvalued OpenSea was at $13 billion.
I think that's well said. Right? We might.
Yeah, you know what? We can contextualize this because the current market cap of CBOE is $13 billion. Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. 13 billion is a lot for an NFT
They have
exchange.
1.75 billion in gross profit, and I can't find EBITDA on the table, but
listen,
they're making money.
The NFT was like a cultural phenomenon, right? I mean, you know what I mean? It was like a thing for like a segment of the population for the better part of 12, 18 months. But that's gone now. I mean, nobody talks about NFTs.
No.
I was talking about them on the daily with people. Like, nobody's talking about these things anymore. They're
I
gone.
think companies are still working on, there's been a ton of integration. And if you look at, a lot of these consumer brands on how do you create an NFT around loyalty, or how do you use an NFT and have a actual use case for it? But the Fantasyland days of, Bored Ape Yacht Club has built a community now, right? But, all of these other projects that were in the works, essentially they've just been totally evaporated. And to talk about going pricing to 0, Danny and I had this conversation. One of our friends actually invested in that round at 13 billion, and we tried to talk him off the ledge. But if you think about it, with the pricing war, you have a market that's shrinking. You have now a big competitor to OpenSea, Blur, which is taking share from them. And then it reminds me back of the ride hailing days, right? Uber versus Lyft. And it was like, who's just going to continue to cut pricing, and then it's going to cut margin. And now you're in a market cycle where the only thing investors are concerned about is, what is your gross profit margin? What does your EBITDA look like? And now you're like, oh, guess what? We can't grow. We have massive layers of competition coming into the market. We have no pricing power, and we're just totally screwed.
Yeah,
So
like,
who's investing in that? I don't know.
About actually. I have to backtrack. I lied. I do have 2 NFTs. They're both in my wallet. One's a AAA card, and the other's a Costco card. They're unique to me. They give me member benefits, and in some cases, I can use my AAA card at certain hotels to get a discount.
Yeah, but that's not on the blockchain, Danny. If it's not on the blockchain, it doesn't count. Okay,
it's in the blockchain. I'm sure it's in a database at somewhere. But yeah, true. I mean, there's probably a lot of criticism you could levy to some of the ideas that underpinned the huge amounts of capital deployed into those places, anyways. But we're sort of jumping the gun here with AI being the next topic, but if something is truly open and interoperable as like an investment premise, then that means that a lot of it is going to be commoditized away, because as you see, what prevents anybody at any time from starting an exchange where, it's like, oh yeah, we can connect to the same database because the database is publicly accessible and do some features. So I think brand building and retention in anything that's that open of a system is going to be tough. And if you look at the traditional exchanges, they have a lock-in, which is that if you want to transact on them, you need to go to them. So it's like, if you just zoom out a little bit and think like, what is the actual function of these things? It might be useful. Sure, transact your NFTs, but like, how do you defend from a business point of view that process?
No, it's a fair point. Well, I mean, now they've got Bitcoin NFTs too, which are I think have its own interesting problems. But there was a mint that happened last week or the week before on the Bitcoin NFT that was a big one, right? So
I'm sure if Clint was here, he would give you the bull case. But
Clint would love decentralized. He would say something about being decentralized, right? and off we would go on that. But Nick, what you're very quiet on this, right? What are your thoughts on NFT? Are you a closet NFT hoarder, right?
No,
Come on.
I'm very much the opposite in a lot of cases, but more so opposite for the marketplaces themselves, because I think that they are frothy, as you're saying, because they don't really hold any part of the infrastructure properly. Like if you look at CBOE, how long did it take them to get to the 13 billion, and how hard is it to disintermediate yourself if you're a subscriber of their data, if they're part of your own infrastructure? That's going to take you potentially years,
or never.
Or it's just impossible, right? If you're one of their customers or counterparties. Working with them, whereas overnight you could say, oh, my buddy thought this new exchange Blur is a little bit cooler, a little bit hipper, more interesting looking. Yeah, you could just move immediately. Everything being decentralized in that regard, you don't have to have that same commitment. I mean, even with Uber and Lyft, I actually like that comparison a lot, because try to be the next Uber or Lyft to come in and see what happens. I mean, you've had you can't do it unless you try to differentiate between them. So that's why you have Via. But try to be Lyft or Uber 2.0 and enter the space. It's pretty damn hard because of the infra they've built up. But then if you come in and try to be Blur 2.0, you know what? Somebody's going to do it. And it's called TikTok, or it's called the next version of MySpace. So that's why I'm just less bullish on the NFT marketplace and some of this open source stuff.
Credit where it's due. If Blur has captured 80% of the transaction volume, even if that on an absolute basis is down like 90%, that is impressive. And I mean, I have some friends that were, heavily into crypto trading and whatever, and some of them were actually just shockingly successful at it. So good news for them. But OpenSea never did a token drop, which I think pissed a lot of people off. And Blur did one almost right away. Yeah. They've created incentive mechanisms for people that are heavy users of the platform. They also have sort of engaged in some warfare related to, if you allow secondary trading on OpenSea, you can't do it on Blur, but Blur is the one that's free, and whatever. Like, that's good corporate tactics for them respectively. But, I think, is Blur worth $700 million? Maybe with someone else's money. Certainly, I'm having a tough time imagining it. But if they have accomplished a lot in a short time, then, props to them. So
all right. So it sounds like everyone's saying, hard pass on NFT exchanges.
Oh,
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it then. Oh, AI. So this one I picked for Don. Don's favorite topic, AI update for the week. Right?
I'm going off video and I'm going on mute.
All right, so Musk is doing an AI business naturally. He's got to start like business number 12, right, or whatever he's up to now, and he wants to have this like woke angle. And then of course, OpenAI comes out with their APIs this week, right? So Nick, like let me hit you up first, man. So when you think about AI with this Mustang, he's saying that OpenAI is too woke, right? So do you care if your AI has a bias, like a political bias, if it has, I don't know, like male female bias, like I don't know what else could be out there, right? You know what I mean? Likes baseball, hates basketball. That's some other bias. Like, do you care if your AI has a bias?
I definitely care. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think it's super dangerous to be a biased AI. I mean, you found that with facial recognition in a lot of ways, where like the whole criminal database was skewed in one direction, so that when you were trying to plug criminals using facial recognition, more often than not, a certain group of individuals were more heavily scrutinized, right? So
right.
I think it's dangerous once you move it over to even something as simple as like a chat GPT equivalent. And yeah, you have to find that appropriate balance of wokeness, I guess. But once you open these things up, I think in the full Musk freedom of speech manner, you're going to get some pretty brutal responses that I think are going to be super dangerous, particularly when you're not limiting them to 18 or older, or folks that have actually had a bit of an education and can think for themselves. So yeah, I think there's danger there.
It seems like a hopeless exercise to me, right?
That's also true. Yeah.
So right? I mean, like, come on, like this is. I mean, maybe one day. I don't know. Who knows? The folks in technology do amazing things, but so Don, then what? Like, bringing it back to the investment case, like you're gonna have all these different AIs. Some have the bias thing. Some, have different sets of data that they're based off of, or whatever. Like, if you're thinking about investing into some of these names, do any like jump out at you? Are there certain types that you think are better than others? Like, what's your gut telling you?
I think it's, unless you're really in the weeds of the technology behind this and understand, I mean, obviously they go to market plan and how are they going to acquire users over other, AI, comparable to, if you look at why Bing and, these different, is non-existent, and, obviously Google took over search. But I think what's going on, I was reading an update. I don't know if it was from PitchBook or someone else this morning sent out, and they always do the updated, where all the capital's going, inflows in VC land. And, healthcare, I understand investing in healthcare and biotech now, because it really is genuinely the only place you should be wanting to invest during a high interest rate environment. By the way, it's super defensible.
Really?
So
Why?
I think
these
so.
are like super long duration assets. Like biotech is a beneficiary of having a zero rate environment, I would guess.
I think, well, two things, especially in healthcare, like you're seeing a lot of people shift over to with, the looming recession that, I don't know if it's coming next week or coming in 2 years, but, one of the bigger trends that I've seen across board is people that have somewhat of a healthcare focus in their fund have been more moving towards like affordability healthcare platforms, right? Like, how do we find that? Where's cost cutting coming from, et cetera? But yeah, I think people are taking advantage. Musk has always been on the forefront of technology, and he thrives being able to take advantage of specific market environments. And like, Tesla has obviously weathered the storm in the EV race against everyone else who went out via, a SPAC and has totally got smoked. But when you think about it, like you're seeing a lot of bad actors in this space take advantage of the AI buzz. So you have like, Danny, I told you this, I bought a stock, a few weeks ago that is like a complete, I followed this thing for years. It is shitty lead left underwriter. Yeah, the stock traded to 20 at one point. It's been trading like $1.20 for weeks. And I was like, the CEO is so sleazy that he's going to do some AI press release in the next 10 days. And I said, Danny, how long did it take? 3 days till he came out with the press release? Yeah. And the thing went from $1.20 to $2.60. But like gaming it like that and understanding, like you're seeing, but this is what's going on, right? Especially like who wasn't buying AI? Like this craze is going on. C3, like AI is the ticker. Like, how do you not buy that stock at $11? Like, I don't care what the fundamentals are. Like, it's going to be the first thing searched, right? And like, at that point you had the market rallying as well. So retail participation came back. Just gauge retail participation on where Tesla's trading. So, you kind of look at this, and I just think that, this space across board, like there's going to be a lot of great companies built, but there's going to be also a lot of the same what we've seen with, the NFT phenomenon, right? Just a bunch of people taking advantage of
money grab,
capital inflows in a market environment.
It feels like it has potential to be more real. Like if you think about past mini bubbles, I mean, remember 3D printing? Those stocks all look like this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, who needs Home Depot? I can just print my next house, or whatever the thesis was there. It kind of didn't play out. It was a real product, though. People use 3D printed materials. Mm-hmm. This feels like that. It's the same. It's going back to the point I made earlier. If you have a large language model that you plug into your app, that's great because it makes your app better. But if my next startup idea is, a facilitator of something that plugs into OpenAI's API, like that type of stuff would get commoditized away because everyone else can do it too. It's like the net improvement of my team's engineering, my hypothetical startup, is probably not in aggregate better over time than the next idea if it's something like a generic customer service or whatever thing.
Yeah, I don't think you can build a company on top of like a ChatGPT and have the only value proposition that you're offering is that thing, right? You gotta,
right.
Unless you have some kind of unique data set, that's the only time I think you could add that unique data set into.
Musk is purporting with his, like Elon is obviously a never-ending source of comedy for us all, and comedy in the best possible light. But it's good that he is doing this. This is a prototypical Musk move to be like, hey, I've got all this data, I'm gonna spin it up into something. Sure, yeah, that's great.
Monetize it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the winner here is actually the folks that have been in the room the entire time. Though I think the true winners are going to be your Azures, your Googles, and your Amazons, because no
chip
matter
makers,
what, you're going to need them to be churning out the processing to work through these models, to train the models, and especially if have you dealt with Mechanical Turk through Amazon? You could have someone just plugging in pictures of cats, and they're getting paid to tag pictures of cats. It could be anything, but those are going to be some of the best use cases in and around AI, and they're the most mundane facets of it, and they're not even AI themselves, but they, unlike the exchanges where I kind of don't find a lot of need on the NFT side because they could be circumvented. I mean, these three players have won the war on processing power for or compute power per dollar, and I think just disentrenching them in this AI space is going to be real difficult because everyone also wants their own unique data sets. Because I think, AG, you probably feel differently about me about the wokeness of AI, and maybe Don feels differently and Danny feels differently. So all four of us are going to need a different training set. And guess who's going to win there? All three of those players. So though in my mind, that's where my money is. I mean, I know it's mostly going to be baked in for a long bit, but every time one of us wants to make a new data set, guess who we're going to, and guess who's making cash on every exchange.
I just want to know how long till we get a Trump AI product. I think he was like last to the. He dropped that NFT. That was like, we're getting it soon. Don't worry.
I missed that.
What's the what's the Twitter knockoff they have? What's the name of it?
Truth.
Oh
Truth.
Truth. Truth Social.
Truth AI. Get ready. Coming to a theater near you.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get the term sheet in front of you, Don, so we can talk about it. All right, boys, let's hit the last one here. E-cigarettes. So I don't know if you guys know this, but yours truly is, I love tobacco. Okay. I know it's not good for you, but I love it. I was a big cigarette guy until my second kid was born, and then I stopped. But I definitely partake of a cigar from time to time, right? But so Altria, this one actually caught my eye, and the reason it did is when I was building my index series, Juul was like the number 2 largest pre-IPO stock for like a 2-year period of time after this deal came through with Altria, where Altria invested $12.8 billion for a 35% stake at a $38 billion valuation, right? They got that stake all the way down to $714 million now, right? So it's brutal. But this news just came out that Altria is looking to buy NJOY, which is the number 3 player, at least in the US by market share, and divest its Juul stake. So wanted to put it out there. What do you guys think of e-cigarettes, right? You guys ever try any of these? Juul, NJOY?
Obviously.
I have. Yeah. I have tried a Juul before.
I haven't. I haven't done the vape thing. Is it like a cigarette? It's different.
No, the satisfaction of smoking a cigarette, and earmuffs, if my parents are listening to this, it massively exceeds a Juul. But I guess people conflate tobacco and nicotine, right? Like nicotine in the abstract, I'm not going to pretend to know any of the data, I'm just generalizing, probably is a better chemical than the delivery mechanism of inhaling burnt tobacco, right? Like the chemical is less bad than the combustible stuff that you're inhaling all day.
Less bad. But I like that. It's still bad, but it's less bad.
Right.
That's like
so if you want nicotine in your life, then probably vaping is I'm doing bunny or dog asterisk, like healthier way to do it. But yeah, the deal is interesting. So there's one just on the prior slide. They've marked it down to $714 million at the enterprise value level, but their actual stake is like $250 million. So they invested at 12.8, and they've written it down to 250 or 230 or whatever the number is. But the other thing that's interesting is that in this advanced talks to buy NJOY for $2.75 billion, they're also divesting of their IQOS stake to Philip Morris International for like $2.7 billion. So they're sort of getting NJOY for free. Again, asterisk on free because they're spending $2.7 billion. And is that a good use of capital when you could just do special dividend, buyback, whatever? They've not been good at capital allocation, so probably a big question mark.
So here's my thing. Is this really, this vape thing, Nick, is this really a marijuana play? Are they just getting ready for the marijuana that's everybody knows that's coming in a couple years' time, right?
I don't know why you're looking at me. I got a shave. That's why. Yeah. I went through security and
you were just profiled, Nick.
Yeah, Global Entry had no idea who I was yesterday. No, I have no idea. I would pick up where Danny left off if that's fair.
Okay, so then how about this, Nick? In our neighborhood, there's like 25 vape shops within a 3-block radius. It's nuts. It's nuts. They just put one up across the street from the school down the block, right? So people are getting ready for this thing. I guess the vape shops feel like it's coming. The marijuana is going to come.
Absolutely,
the vape, right?
So let's bring it full circle back to the NFT marketplaces, right? Like OpenSea came in quick, came in hot, got a massive valuation. Then you had Blur come in. I mean, why wouldn't you just have some brand new hype beast styled marijuana vape come in and be the next big thing? I mean, maybe that's what they're betting on.
Well, like MedMen and those guys are already used. They have the device mechanism through vape, and they could do it.
It's not an open ecosystem. That's the difference. Yeah. There's a huge regulatory issue, which is, I mean, they've had it out for Juul from the beginning. It's like NJOY has FDA authorization, which is sort of like, what is meaningfully the difference? I mean, who knows? So distribution is like a very physical real world thing. And then the regulatory is also a very physical real world thing. So I would argue that is not too similar to the Blur OpenSea, because you really can't, these are incredibly profitable industries generally, and they're protected. Like you can't start.
Do you think this is mostly marketing though? If you really think about it, how much does a pack of cigarettes cost to create? Yeah. And how much does it sell for?
Right, but that's the idea, is that they're hugely, hugely profitable. So typically, like rent-seeking businesses get competed away, and these ones can't. So I would be shocked if there was like a meaningful global usurper of tobacco, smokeless, whatever all the acronyms are, that like heated delivery, whatever they use, that would come in at this point. I mean, it's
but there have to be others that are FDA approved. You find a smaller one and just dive into that. No.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm the
a
last guy
lot
to
of
talk
people just
about
buy
tobacco.
the device and then get their own juice, right? That's the thing. Like that's why
Of
those
course.
vape shops exist. So it's like,
Right.
yeah, how hard it?
I got you.
You buy the device, it's branding and marketing. It's not really hard. I mean, Juul did a good job at a device because it plugs into a fucking, sorry, and I edit that out, iPhone charger. So
No, I totally get that. But look, but I mean, can we agree on this? Like tobacco, cigarettes are kind of going away, right? I think every year, every generation, more and more people, less people smoke cigarettes, at least in the U.S. And I can't maybe speak internationally, it's different. But I mean, this e-cigarettes, at least, I feel like that's growing. You have this like kind of declining business.
I mean, Philip Morris has said over and over that they want 50% of their revenues to come from smokeless or what everything that's not like smoking a cigarette.
Right.
So I think, if you go way back in time to 2008 or whenever that split between Philip Morris International and Altria occurred, that was like part of the idea. And yeah, I mean, PM is probably a more interesting stock than Mo, if you ask me, but
right. Yeah, this is just a fascinating. This Juul being so high in the pre-IPO rankings and then dropping like a rock, right, when they came into regulatory issues. It almost makes me feel like, like Uber came out on the right side of that. Like they had a ton of regulatory issues, right? But then all the regulatory issues cleared up, and then they just kept ripping, right? But there could have definitely been a path where all the big cities shut these things down, right? And they could have been a high flyer and gone to zero as well, right? So, I mean, I guess it's like the go fast and break stuff methodology. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, right? You just you got to roll the dice, I suppose, as an investor.
Yeah, and I'm curious if you've seen any color as of late, because I think the big valuation drop, at least in the news, was last summer, right?
Yeah.
So the headline was Fidelity and Capital Group cut it by 88%. But I actually just looked into what they were marking it publicly. Capital Group, and this is personal view of what I saw from their N-Port filing. They hold Series A at about $7, and Fidelity holds Series C at about $5.50. So first, that's a little backwards, because if the company's beleaguered, you'd expect the Series C to be a bit better. But also, there's almost a 30% gap between those, and it's basically the same quarter, right? So
I think there's some dividend then on some of that stock on the pref. There's like a friend of mine's a shareholder, but they get paid a dividend and all this other stuff. So it's spinning out some sort of cash for shareholders now.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, e-cigarettes, I'm fascinated. I might have to go and get some just to say that I did it, right? But okay, boys, listen, let's call it there. I unfortunately have to go call somebody, but it was good to see you guys. I know we didn't do it last weekend, so good to see you guys. So any parting thoughts before we jump off?
Just keep wearing black. You look great in it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
I second that. Thank you for having me. Always a fun time, gents.
No, man. Johnny, I appreciate you. Nitti, I'll see you in a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, see you in a bit.
All right, boys. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Guys.